This right here is the future of wrestling.
We're back, Ringside Radio, 1360 WNJC. And guys, I am truly honored. We have a very special guest today. He is one of the all-time greats in, forget WWE, but in wrestling altogether. Jim, the Anvil Neidhart. And Anvil, how are you doing this morning?
Very good. Can you hear me okay in Philadelphia?
Yes, we can hear you in the great city of brotherly love. Jim, is this one of your favorite cities ever?
Oh, yeah, not one of my favorite cities, but I've had some of my best wrestling matches of my career in Philadelphia at the Spectrum.
The old Philadelphia Spectrum. You know they're tearing down that building this year.
I know, that's a shame. There's a lot of history in that place.
That was when you go back to the 80s and the old WWF territory, and you had the Spectrum, Madison Square Garden, the Boston Garden. Those were three of the hottest arenas to play in the entire country.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, of course, there are no better sports fans anywhere than Philadelphia. I think we can all agree upon that.
I would definitely agree with that, and considering that I'm one of those sports fans, I think that we have the best in the entire country. Hey, Jim, what are you up to these days? It was reported that you got into a little bit of trouble a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you know, I would believe absolutely nothing you read and just a little bit of what you see. Nobody has gotten themselves into any trouble whatsoever.
Okay.
And it's amazing what shows up on the internet and Wikipedia and all that.
Well, talk about that, because I think the internet has definitely revolutionized wrestling and the dirt sheets, and you have so many rumors, and you really don't know what's real and what's not real, and there's so many people out there who kind of present themselves as experts and people in the know. Talk about that, Jim, because the business is definitely different today than it was back when you were at your peak back in the 80s and the 90s, right?
Well, you know, the business, the wrestling business hasn't really changed in the way where, you know, everybody's got 2 arms and 2 legs, you know, so everybody's doing the same wrestling, and, you know, the internet, of course, as we all know, you know, is out there so much. It's like the National Enquirer or some shit. Worse.
Right. Well, there's so many sites, too. There's so many sites. There's so many writers. Jim, in my opinion, the era that you really were at your peak in, the mid to late 80s, the 90s, that was the greatest period that wrestling went through. That was the rock and roll era. My co-host here, King Magnus, he's a student of that era. He wants to ask you some questions about your time. King, go ahead, take it away.
Hey, listen, I just first want to start off with saying that it's a pleasure to be speaking to you. As a child of the 80s, we're all definitely excited to have you on the line with us today. First thing I wanted to ask you, Jim, how did you get linked with Brett?
How did I get linked with Brett? I was wrestling down here in 1985 for Eddie Graham out of Florida here. And the New York office called me, and they said, you want to come work for us? Show tomorrow night and be there at Madison Square Garden. I said, okay. And so I started working. I started there that night at Madison Square Garden '85, and I was doing just fine on my own as a single. And they gave me Mr. Fuji as a manager, and I was going to go on some singles with Hogan and stuff. And then Brett, I think he's my brother-in-law. Brett was doing a single then, and the office didn't know if they were going to go with him, or he was too small, or Brett wasn't happy. So he asked me, "Do you want to tag?" You know, because it was a lot easier traveling with a tag team in those days. You know, doing 100 days in a row and stuff like that. And so it kind of got started like that. And
well, let me ask you, what's your relationship with Brett like today?
What's it like today?
Yes.
I guess it's the same as it's always been, really. I haven't really thought about it in depth that much. I know everybody with their books these days, you know. Everybody's trying to do a Jose Canseco tell-all, and here's my stuff in my book. I'll say a bunch of, negative things about my brother-in-law, my partner, and see if I can't make some money on it.
Well, we get what you're saying. The Hart Foundation, definitely known as being one of the greatest tag team champions of all time, tag team groups of all time. What is interesting is that even when you guys were heels, you guys were still insanely popular. I mean, on almost like that you guys were faces. The Hart Foundation, there's no dispute whether or not if you guys are in the top 5 greatest tag teams champions of all time. What did you prefer, being a face or heel?
You see, everyone is all wised up these days to the face or heel thing. Back then, like the mid '80s, you had tags, and everybody was, you had to be exactly like your partner.
Yeah.
And tag this, and everything was a double your pleasure, double your fun. But Brett and I, we took it to another dimension where I was going to stay in my same character anyway, because that kind of is my character, like a bad boy / heel / maniac, bad guy. And Brett's always been a, shall we say, ladies' man?
Well,
put it mildly.
Well, no, but
Nice.
definitely looking back, you were the powerhouse, sort of like the wild guy a little bit, and Brett was a lot more conservative, and he had the smooth angle. And speaking of that, when you talked about your singles, one of the best matches that I ever seen you perform was you had a singles match against Randy Macho Man Savage during his title reign. And you did one of the best moves, or best executed moves I've ever seen, where you were on the outside of the ropes and he was in the ring, and you launched and propelled yourself like a missile at him. And let me ask you something. And that's what made you so phenomenal, because you were known as this big tough guy, but you were so agile. I mean, to see you hurl yourself into the ring like a missile like that, it was phenomenal. What type of conditioning did you have to do to prepare yourself for that?
Well, believe me, when you're professional wrestling and at that level, you're in some really, really super condition. And I was weighing about 275-ish in those days, And of course, I was a shot putter. I was a world shot putter pre-Montreal, pre-Moscow, and all that. And so all that explosiveness in your legs kind of gave me that propulsion to jump over stuff like that.
Yeah.
To catapult myself in by myself into the ring. Plus all the running with, I played a couple years in the NFL, all that running, and then even when you're wrestling professionally at that level, you're in unbelievable shape. It's a condition that you can only get from being in the ring every night.
Well, it definitely showed. That is one of my favorite matches of all time. What was your favorite angle that you worked in your time in the WWF?
I would say, I think going back with the British Bulldogs with British Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, that was a good angle. We worked going toward WrestleMania 3, 94,500 people at the Pontiac Silverdome.
Yes.
Wow.
That angle took us about all of a year to work toward that big house.
You want to know something? That is something that we always talk about in our wrestling program, is how angles were worked over a large course of time to get the fans extremely passionate about it, to build up.
That's just like the boxing in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
They'll work grudges and feuds, and you want to get some spark the interest up fans. So you have to make that good. But with the Bulldogs is when you go against them, you're going to be good no matter what. They're definitely the top hands you're going to work with at any time in your career. Dynamite Kid.
Yes. Well, it's funny because when we were preparing the questions, that was one of the ideas. Well, is Anvil going to say the British Bulldogs, or is he going to say Demolition? We weren't really sure, but we knew we knew the British Bulldogs were going to be in there.
Demolition. Now we had one of our best matches against them in the Spectrum. That's when you had Brian Adams and my old partner Barry Darso. And one of the Axe and Smash, and with Bill Eadie, they were really, really good. And then Barry Darso is a big guy again. He's 6'4", all 320. So I could do my high flying stuff outside of the ring, and Darso was big enough to catch me.
Yeah.
But
well, those matches were definitely classic, and again,